The courtroom was quiet, save for the faint tapping of Chloe Sutton's manicured fingers on her phone. "Can we speed this up? I have a lunch reservation." Her words sliced through the calm like glass, uttered with the casual arrogance of someone used to bending the world around her whims. At 22, Chloe didn't wait for a reply, scrolling through emails as though she were managing a customer complaint rather than standing before a judge. Judge Frank Caprio leaned back, took a slow, steadying breath, and set down his pen, his eyes experienced and patient, fixed on her. "Ms. Sutton, this is a courtroom. Put the phone away and address the charges." The words were calm, precise, yet carried the weight of decades of authority. Chloe's attorney jumped to her feet, smooth and practiced, offering a ready excuse fines would be paid, the matter resolved. But Judge Caprio didn't flinch. "This court is not a payment portal," he said, each syllable measured. "What makes this story more than a simple parking violation isn't the fine. It's the pattern, the privilege, the illusion that money and family influence can bend the law." Chloe's casual dismissal. "My assistant handles the mail, and her claim that my family funds this city would soon collide with the reality that public process cannot be bought and that access and dignity are rights, not favors. Not." Before we dive deeper into this courtroom drama, take a moment to reflect. How often do we see entitlement ignored because of wealth? Today, you'll witness a confrontation that challenges assumptions about privilege, respect, and justice. You'll see patience tested, arrogance confronted, and the true meaning of mercy revealed. If you believe in accountability and respect for the vulnerable, hit subscribe now and follow this story, because what happens next will not only change Chloe Sutton, it will leave the courtroom forever transformed. The morning started quietly on Hope Street, Providence, but the calm would soon fracture. Chloe Sutton's silver luxury sedan came to a stop in a space clearly marked for van-accessible handicapped parking. The spot was empty, yes, but that emptiness did not erase its purpose. 10 minutes inside the pharmacy, Chloe returned to find a citation on her windshield. Without a second thought, she tore it into pieces, tossing it carelessly onto the sidewalk. Her gesture, casual and dismissive, spoke louder than words. She believed her family's influence shielded her from consequence. Judge Caprio, reading the case file, saw the pattern immediately. This wasn't an isolated act. 14 months prior, Chloe had blocked a loading zone at Brown University during a food delivery. When a campus officer confronted her, she shrugged, claiming, "My family donated the library." Privilege and wealth had created a bubble, a sense that rules applied to others, but not her. The citations were not just ignored, they were multiplied by disregard. Certified summonses sent to her residence over the past month were signed for by Chloe or her assistant. She admitted reluctantly that she didn't read each piece of mail. Judge Caprio's gaze, calm but firm, pierced the veneer of indifference. 3 notices ignored were no oversight. They were a pattern. A young woman who had grown up with resources, power, and donations to the city had allowed that upbringing to become entitlement, to assume she could bypass accountability. Adding depth to the harm caused the court listen to Officer Grace Chen's testimony and the body cam footage. Chloe's words, "Do you know who I am? My family funds this city," reverberated through the courtroom, chilling in their arrogance. Chen's interpretation was clear. These were not idle boasts. They were intended as leverage, a subtle threat to bend authority through wealth. And yet the tangible impact of Chloe's actions was immediate. A mother and daughter arriving for a critical physical therapy session could not access the van due to Chloe's car blocking the only space. 10 minutes might seem trivial to Chloe, but for a girl reliant on accessibility infrastructure, it meant lost therapy and disrupted care. Judge Caprio's methodical approach transformed each fact into moral clarity. The evidence-torn citation, certified notices, prior warnings, and the timeline of influence attempts from Sutton Holdings painted a portrait of repeated disregard for process and people. The courtroom wasn't just a stage for punishment. It was a mirror reflecting Chloe's misunderstanding of public service, community responsibility, and the limits of familial privilege. Here the law would not bend. Here entitlement would meet accountability. This was the start of a reckoning not just for Chloe Sutton, but for anyone who believed influence could replace responsibility. As the officer's narrative and documentation were laid bare, the stakes became clear. Public access, dignity, and respect were not negotiable. Chloe's world of convenience and donation-fueled privilege collided with reality. In Judge Caprio's courtroom, wealth could not erase harm. The courtroom's atmosphere shifted, tension thickening with every passing moment. Chloe Sutton leaned back in her chair, phone, forgotten for the moment, but her smirk remained. She waved casually at Officer Chen, dismissing the very real harm she had caused. No one was using it. "What's the problem?" she said, as though this were a debate, not a legal proceeding. Judge Caprio's eyes, calm yet unyielding, pinned her in place. "Ms. Sutton, harm isn't just about collisions. It's denial," he began. The words cut through the room, framing the consequences she had so casually ignored. Across from her, Diana Hale, her attorney, tried to steer the narrative toward payment and resolution, but Caprio would not allow shortcuts. "Paying a fine teaches nothing but how to write a check. I want to understand what happened." Chloe exhaled sharply, annoyance flickering across her face. She recounted the morning's events in clipped, indifferent tones, entering the pharmacy, returning to find the citation tearing it in half. It was empty. "No harm, no foul," she said. But the courtroom already knew better. The mother on the phone, Sarah Bennett, had missed 20 critical minutes of her daughter's therapy because the van-accessible space had been blocked. The tangible impact of Chloe's actions was undeniable. Then came the chilling audio, the words that encapsulated entitlement. "My family funds this city." The sound, crisp and recorded by Officer Dantas, echoed in the courtroom. Officer Chen described the statement as intimidation, subtle but clear. Chloe waved it off as sarcasm. The disconnect was palpable. She saw money as influence. The court saw it as irrelevant to justice. Judge Caprio methodically laid out the timeline, connecting the dots with surgical precision citation issued at 9:42 a.m. First call from Sutton Holdings at 10:18, email at 10:52, all in an effort to quietly resolve the situation. Each attempt to bend the system highlighted a growing pattern of disregard for process responsibility and human impact. As Chloe's smirk faltered, the courtroom felt the weight of Caprio's moral authority. He asked pointed, simple questions. Did she park in a handicapped accessible space without authorization? Did she tear up the citation? Did she ignore 3 summons notices? Chloe hesitated, finally admitting yes to each. Her defense wealth donations influence crumbled in the face of unflinching facts and undeniable consequences. The gallery, silent until now, absorbed the unfolding reality. Privilege could not shield Chloe from responsibility. The pattern of entitlement had been exposed, the voices of those harmed made central, and the stage set for accountability. The tension had reached its peak, but the courtroom drama was far from over. Now the reckoning would be measured not by wealth, but by mercy and accountability. Judge Caprio paused, letting the silence settle over the courtroom. Chloe Sutton's smirk had faded, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. He set down his pen and addressed her directly. "Ms. Sutton, wealth does not confer ownership over public process. Influence does not override responsibility." For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The arrogance that had filled the space only minutes earlier now met the steady weight of accountability. Then came the pivot. Caprio outlined a plan that no money could buy, a plan designed to teach Chloe the human impact of her entitlement. He stayed a portion of her fines, $400, conditional on her completion of a restorative accountability program. The courtroom listened as he detailed each component. Real heartfelt apologies to Officer Chen and Sarah Bennett, hours of community service split between the Rhode Island Food Bank and the Mobility Access Coalition, and public service announcements addressing access equity. She would also complete a donor ethics module and submit a personal reflection on the relationship between money and authority. Chloe blinked, the enormity of the expectations dawning on her. This was not a game. There would be no polished PR letters, no curated photo ops, no shortcuts. The very privileges she had relied upon, the wealth, the influence, the family name, were irrelevant here. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly, voice calm but piercing. "Mercy isn't a discount. It's a contract." The courtroom felt the shift. Chloe was no longer simply a young woman challenging authority. She was confronted with the consequences of denying access, dismissing rules, and misusing influence. The words of Sarah Bennett, delivered earlier over the phone, echoed through the space. "Time is infrastructure." 10 minutes of casual thoughtlessness had tangible human cost. As Caprio explained the timeline connecting the ticket, the calls from Sutton Holdings and the ignored summonses, the moral lesson crystallized. Chloe's world of entitlement had collided with a system designed to preserve fairness and access. Her smirk disappeared entirely when the judge's gaze lingered on her unflinching, as he emphasized that public servants serve the community, not individual donors. For the first time, Chloe understood the gravity of her actions, not just the fines, but the broader lesson of accountability, empathy, and civic responsibility. The courtroom held a new energy, a mix of tension and anticipation as the young heiress faced the reality that her choices, not her wealth, would define the outcome. Here in this quiet Providence courtroom, a transformation had begun, and Chloe Sutton would have no choice but to walk the path set before her, a path of service, reflection, and genuine restitution. The pivot was complete. The story shifted from arrogance and influence to restorative justice and moral reckoning. The stage was set for Chloe's personal growth, and the audience felt the moral weight settle, preparing them for the final confrontation and lessons of accountability. Judge Caprio picked up the pen again, his eyes scanning the courtroom with the calm authority that had shaped countless lives. Ms. Sutton. He began, his voice steady, yet carrying the weight of consequence. The evidence supports all charges against you. You parked in a disabled accessible space. You destroyed a citation. You ignored 3 summons notices, and you attempted to leverage your family's influence to escape accountability. The words hung in the air, unyielding and final. Chloe's mouth opened, then closed. The smirk she had worn so easily earlier was gone. She had no retort, no appeal to privilege. Money could build libraries, fund programs, and sway opinions, but it could not erase denial of access or human impact. The courtroom absorbed the lesson: public service, justice, and dignity were not negotiable. Then came the sentence, not just punitive, but transformative. Part of her fine's $400 would be waived contingent on the completion of her restorative accountability plan. Chloe would write sincere apologies, spend 150 hours in community service, assisting both the food bank and the Mobility Access Coalition, record public service announcements about accessibility rights, and submit a written reflection on money versus authority. Each requirement was deliberate, designed to instill responsibility, empathy, and understanding. Judge Caprio's words struck deeper than fines or tasks. Mercy is not a discount. It is a contract. You do not own this process. You do not own the outcome. You own only your choices. Chloe felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. For the first time, she truly confronted the human consequences of her actions. A young girl delayed therapy. A public servant intimidated a community, momentarily disrespected. The courtroom was silent, witnessing the transformation in real time. The lesson was clear, not just for Chloe, but for anyone watching. Accountability is not measured by wealth, influence, or status. True justice is restorative. It teaches, it corrects, and it cultivates growth. Caprio's decision ensured that Chloe would emerge from this experience, not merely fined, but educated, humbled, and aware. As the gavel came down, the moral was undeniable. Privilege could not override consequence. Wealth could not substitute responsibility, and arrogance could be corrected with guidance, service, and reflection. Chloe Sutton would leave that courtroom with a new understanding. Public process belongs to everyone, and respect is earned through actions, not donations. In that moment, justice and mercy converged, offering both accountability and the chance for redemption. 12 weeks later, Chloe Sutton returned to the courtroom alone. Gone were the layers of privilege, the entourage, and the aura of untouchability. The silver sedan, the smirk, the phone scrolling, none of it mattered anymore. She stood before Judge Caprio, documents in hand, logs of community service, sincere apologies, recorded PSAs, and her personal reflection on money and authority. Ms. Sutton, Caprio said, his voice calm but expectant, summarize your reflection in your own words. Chloe inhaled, her gaze steady for the first time. I thought money meant access. I thought my family's donations gave me power over people and process. I was wrong. I don't own anything except my own choices. Blocking that van accessible spot, dismissing the citation, ignoring the summonses, I hurt real people. Time isn't just minutes. It's infrastructure, it's opportunity, it's care. I've learned that respect and accountability are earned through action, not bought with donations. The courtroom listened quiet, absorbing her transformation. Officer Grace Chen and Sarah Bennett had both witnessed the change, not in a statement or a press release, but in Chloe's actions and words. Real apologies had been delivered. Community service hours were logged. PSAs were recorded and distributed. The donor ethics module was complete. The lesson had been internalized. Judge Caprio nodded, a subtle smile crossing his face. Access is not for auction. Mercy and accountability are intertwined, and you have demonstrated understanding through your actions. This court acknowledges your efforts. Chloe exhaled, a weight lifting as she realized the significance. She had faced consequences without using wealth as a shield, and she had embraced accountability instead. Beyond her personal growth, the case left a lasting impact on the system. Policies were strengthened. An ex parte influence log recorded off-the-record communications. A donor firewall protected staff from undue pressure, and new protocols ensured accessible parking enforcement was prioritized. Chloe's story became an example not of punishment alone, but of how privilege can be transformed into service and mistakes into lessons. As the gavel came down for the final time, Judge Caprio reflected on the broader truth. Public service is not for sale. It is a responsibility, a duty to the people. Chloe Sutton had learned that the most profound form of freedom comes not from wealth or influence, but from understanding the weight of one's choices and the importance of empathy. For those watching, the story leaves a question. How would you act if confronted with your own privilege? Mercy is not leniency. It is an invitation to change. Accountability is not punishment. It is the path to growth. Chloe's journey reminds us all that respect, service, and integrity define true character. And in that quiet Providence courtroom, justice, mercy, and human dignity prevailed together.